Nola Norrington's tires crunched over gravel as she stared at the gated entrance she definitely hadn't meant to drive through. "This isn't the trailhead," she muttered, squinting at her crumpled paper map. She'd taken a wrong turn somewhere past the last gas station, and now she was on a long, private driveway that wound through towering pines and up a hill. She should have turned around, but the narrow road didn't give her much room to do that safely. Besides, she thought, maybe she could ask someone at the house mansion, really at the top, for directions. Her beat-up Jeep looked wildly out of place as it rolled to a halt in front of a modern glass and stone estate that could have been featured in a magazine. The kind of place with a circular driveway and a fountain in the middle. The kind of place where you didn't knock, you were announced. She'd barely stepped out when a deep voice cut through the air. "Are you lost?" Nola turned and nearly stumbled backward. A man stood at the top of the wide front steps, dressed in black slacks and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves pushed up. His dark hair was swept back, and he had the kind of face you didn't forget: sharp jaw, piercing eyes, and a gaze that pinned her in place. Yeah, I took a wrong turn. I thought I was heading toward Blue Ridge Trail, but I guess not." She held up her useless map like it could explain something. He walked down a few steps, stopping halfway. "You're about 5 miles off. This is private property." "I figured," she said, glancing around at the manicured hedges and the gleaming silver sports car parked near a garage. "I was just going to turn around, and you won't be able to turn around until you hit the bottom of the hill. Narrow road." He paused. "Come inside." "I'll get you a better map." Nola blinked. "Seriously," he shrugged, "you look like you've been driving around for hours. You might as well have some water before heading back." She hesitated. "I'm not going to murder you," he added dryly. "If I was, I probably wouldn't bother with maps." A reluctant laugh escaped her. "Okay, that's fair." She followed him inside, and the moment the doors opened, Nola's breath caught. The interior was sleek and warm at the same time: rich wood floors, black leather furniture, and an open wall of glass that looked out over the forest below. A fireplace crackled to one side, and a grand piano sat unused near the corner. "Wow," she murmured, stepping in slowly. He glanced at her. "I'm Ellis Drayton." "Nola," she said. "Nola Norrington." He nodded once. "Kitchen's this way." She followed him, trying not to gawk at every piece of furniture or the massive abstract painting that probably cost more than her entire car. He handed her a glass of water and leaned against the marble island. "So what brings you up here? Most people don't go hiking in March." "I like the quiet," she said, "and the cold keeps the crowds away. I needed a break." "From what?" "Life," she said, then offered a half smile. "I run a small art supply store. It's been a rough couple of months." Ellis studied her quietly. "You own it," she nodded. "Barely. Rent's gone up and people buy everything online now." He didn't say anything right away, but something shifted in his expression. "And you thought wandering through the mountains alone would fix it?" "I don't know. Maybe." It sounded better than crying over invoices. He let out a low laugh. "Fair enough." A pause stretched between them. She sipped her water. "You said you needed a better map," he said finally, walking toward a drawer. He pulled out a new, glossy trail map and unfolded it. "You were aiming for here," he pointed. "You ended up here." "Wow, that's bad." "Don't feel too bad," he said. "Most GPS systems glitch out up here." "I've had deliveries end up in the next county." She looked at him, eyebrows raised. "You live up here full time?" "I do." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. "Because quiet isn't just for hikers." Nola smiled faintly. "Makes sense." When she moved to leave, Ellis walked her out, and as she reached her Jeep, he said, "Be careful heading down. The road curves sharp near the west drop. Thanks again for the water and not chasing me off your driveway with a shovel." He cracked a grin, just a small one. "You're lucky I wasn't in a worse mood," Nola laughed. "Guess I'll take that as a win." She climbed into her Jeep, but as she buckled her seatbelt, she looked back. Ellis was still standing there, watching her. She waved once and drove off. 3 days later, Nola was in her store, trying to rewire the card reader that had died again, when the bell above the door jingled. She looked up, expecting an art student or a lost tourist. Instead, Ellis Drayton walked in wearing a dark coat and carrying a large shopping bag. Nola blinked. Did you take another wrong turn? I was in town, he said simply. Thought I'd stop by, she stood slowly. Well, you found me. He looked around the shop walls lined with brushes, inks, sketch pads, and handmade journals. This place is nice. Thanks. It's kind of a mess right now. Ellis set the bag on the counter. This is for you. Nola stared. What? He pushed it toward her. Open it. She pulled out a sleek navy coat, long, thick, and clearly expensive, then a pair of leather gloves, then a scarf. I noticed your jacket was practically falling apart when you were at my place, he said. You're wandering around the mountains in something that wouldn't protect you from a breeze. Nola swallowed. Ellis, I can't accept this. You already did, he said. You're welcome, she looked at him, heart thudding. Why are you being nice to me? His eyes softened just slightly. Because I wanted to. Before she could answer, he added, I also brought you a proper thermos. The one you had looked like it belonged to a gas station. Nola let out a surprised laugh. Wow, you're observant. I'm selective, he said. And I don't forget things I notice. She stared at him, emotions swirling too fast to name. Ellis straightened. I'll let you get back to work. But if you ever want to hike with someone who knows the trails, let me know. Nola watched him leave, coat swaying as he stepped into the cold. She looked down at the scarf in her hands and whispered, What just happened? Whatever it was only beginning. I'm not hiking with a stranger, Nola whispered to herself, staring at the business card he'd slipped into the inside pocket of the coat. It was a heavy card, the kind printed on thick matte stock with embossed letters. Just his name, a number, and nothing else. She tucked it into the drawer under the register and tried not to think about the way Ellis's eyes had lingered on her before he'd walked out, or the way he'd noticed things most people didn't. She had customers who came in daily and never realized the heater clicked twice before it started. But she didn't have time to wonder why a man like that would show up twice in her world. Rent was due in 6 days, and she was down to the last tube of oil paint in 3 colors customers actually bought. On Saturday, the bell above the door didn't ring. No one came. By late afternoon, she was restocking brushes she couldn't afford to replace, trying to look busy when her phone buzzed. Not a call. A notification from the store's website. One order, she opened it. Someone had purchased 5 full art kits and paid for express shipping. She blinked. The kits weren't cheap. A single one made her enough to cover a week's utilities. The shipping address wasn't local. It was a corporate suite in Atlanta. Her stomach twisted. Ellis Drayton, no note, no message, just the order. She boxed the kits carefully, double-checked everything, and dropped them at the shipping center before she could talk herself out of it. She didn't want to owe him anything. She didn't want to need anyone. Monday morning, the sky cracked open with sleet, and her roof decided it had had enough. A slow drip started near the back stockroom and quickly turned into a steady trickle. She set a bucket underneath and stared at the ceiling like maybe glaring could fix water damage. By noon, she'd given up pretending to be productive and sat with her chin in her hand at the counter, sketching dull circles on a notepad. The bell rang, not Ellis this time. A woman stepped in, tall and striking, dressed in a sharply tailored coat that looked like it belonged in a fashion spread. Her dark hair was pinned back and her heels clicked softly on the old wood floor. You're Nola, she said. Nola straightened. Yes, I'm Delia Marchand. I work for Ellis Drayton. There was a pause. He didn't mention you, Nola said slowly. I'm not surprised, Delia replied. I manage his philanthropic interests. Nola blinked. Philanthropic interests. Delia pulled a sealed envelope from her handbag and slid it across the counter. He asked me to deliver this personally. What is it? Read it. Nola opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a donation pledge, a sizable one. Enough to cover her store's rent for a year, replenish stock, and install a new security system she'd never been able to afford. She looked up, stunned. This has to be a mistake. It's not, Delia said. Ellis invests in small businesses that matter to him. He believes in people who are trying to create something real. I didn't ask for this. He knows. Nola's voice was low. Why would he do this? Delia's gaze softened faintly. He does that sometimes, helps without asking for anything back. She hesitated, then added, but he doesn't usually show up in person to deliver coats. Or buy 5 art kits he has no use for. Nola's fingers tightened on the edge of the counter. What are you saying? I'm saying, Delia said gently, that if he's paying attention to you, it's not out of charity. Nola swallowed. I can't accept this. You already have, Delia said. But if you really want to return it, you'll have to tell him yourself. She turned, heels clicking again, and reached the door before Nola said, Wait, how do I do that? Delia paused. He's hosting a gallery event Thursday night, his private collection, very exclusive. I suggest you come. I don't belong at things like that. Delia looked over her shoulder. Maybe you don't, but he clearly thinks you do. She was gone before Nola could respond. That night, Nola stood in her apartment, the coat Ellis had given her draped over the back of a chair, the donation form still on the counter. She hadn't signed it. She hadn't thrown it away either. She stared at the card again, just a name and a number. She pulled out her sketchbook instead. The page filled slowly a column of sharp cheekbones, the curve of a hand holding out a scarf, a pair of eyes that saw more than they should. By Thursday, she hadn't decided to go. But she found herself pulling her nicest dress off the back of the closet anyway. It was nothing fancy, but it was black and clean and didn't wrinkle. She paired it with the coat because the truth was it was the warmest thing she had now. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. There was no one to tell. The gallery was in a converted warehouse near the river, glowing with soft lights and filled with people who looked like they'd walked out of luxury catalogs. Nola hesitated at the door until someone took her name and waved her in. She expected to be ignored. Instead, heads turned. She didn't know if it was the coat or the way she looked like she didn't belong, but suddenly she was being offered champagne and guided toward the center of the space. And then he was there. Ellis stood in front of a massive canvas, talking to a small knot of people. He wore a dark suit, crisp and fitted, and he looked like he'd stepped out of a dream and into the real world. His gaze flicked up. He saw her. The conversation around him faded as he moved toward her, each step purposeful. You came, he said, voice low enough not to carry. I didn't say I would. You didn't say you wouldn't, Nola exhaled. Ellis, I need to talk to you about the donation. It's not a donation, he said. It's a spark, she blinked. Excuse me, you're trying to keep something alive. I just added oxygen. I don't want to be your project. You're not, he said, eyes holding hers. You're the first thing that's felt real in a long time. Her breath caught around them, people moved and music played, but none of it reached her. I don't know what this is, she said. You don't have to, Ellis said. Just don't walk away from it yet. Nola looked up at the paintings on the wall. Her eyes stopped on one near the back, a sketch of a woman in a threadbare coat standing in the snow. Her heart dropped. That's me. Yes, she turned back to him. Why? Because I couldn't forget you, Ellis said. And I didn't want to try. I didn't expect to find myself on a wall, Nola said, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the string quartet echoing through the gallery's vaulted ceiling. Ellis didn't speak right away. His gaze flicked toward the sketch again, then back to her. I drew it the night you left my place. I couldn't sleep. Nola folded her arms, not in defiance, but as if trying to hold her reaction in place. You don't even know me. That's not true, he said, eyes steady. I know how you hold your breath before you speak. I know your hands twitch when you're trying not to cry, and I know you think needing help makes you weak. She didn't answer. Ellis took a step closer but didn't touch her. I also know you look at the world like it owes you nothing, but you give it everything anyway. I didn't come here for compliments. I didn't invite you here for them, he said. I wanted you to see what I see. Nola shook her head slowly. You're used to people needing things from you. That's not me. I don't want you to need me, Ellis said. I want you to want me. The words hit harder than she expected. Before she could find a response, a man in a tuxedo approached with a note for Ellis. He glanced at it, frowned slightly, then looked at her. I need to step away for a moment, he said. Don't leave. She didn't promise, but she didn't walk out either. Instead, she wandered past the rows of framed sketches and oil pieces, each more intimate than the last. Landscapes, figures, studies of expression. But what struck her most wasn't the art itself. It was the emotion. These weren't paintings for show. They were memories. Fractured pieces of someone who'd seen too much and bottled it into brushstrokes. A woman stepped beside her. Older, elegant, with silver hair pinned in place and a voice like velvet. "You're the one he drew." Nola turned, startled. "Excuse me?" "I've never seen Ellis sketch anyone before, not from memory, not like that." The woman studied her with quiet intensity. "He's my nephew." "Oh, you look surprised. I thought maybe he didn't have family." The woman's smile was distant. "He doesn't show us often, not since his father died, but I come to these events because I remember who he was before the money." Nola watched her carefully. "What was he like?" "Kind, too kind sometimes. He used to sketch animals from books when he was little. Said they were easier than people because animals didn't lie." Her eyes softened. "He stopped drawing for a long time, the fact that he started again, and with you." She trailed off, letting the implication hang. "I don't know what he wants from me," Nola admitted. "Neither does he," the woman said. "But that doesn't make it less real." Before Nola could ask her name, the woman moved on, swallowed by a crowd of donors near the wine station. Ellis returned minutes later, his brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Board member trying to pull funding from one of the youth programs I support. It's taken care of." She tilted her head. "You do more than host art shows." "I fund studios, scholarships, therapy programs." He paused. "But I don't talk about that unless someone asks." "I'm asking." Ellis looked away for a moment, then back. "I grew up with everything money could buy, but my father believed pain built character, so he gave me nothing I actually needed." Nola didn't interrupt. "I put myself through art school without his help. He didn't speak to me for 3 years. Then he got sick. When he died, he left me everything. The house, the investments, the company shares. I sold most of it, kept what mattered. Including this place," he nodded once. "This gallery was his old warehouse. I turned it into something better." She took a breath. "I didn't come here to fall into anyone's world, Ellis. I've spent years trying to build my own. I can't lose that." "You're not losing anything," he said. "You're being seen." There was a weight in that. A truth she hadn't heard spoken out loud before. She glanced toward the far wall where a new painting caught her eye. It wasn't of her, but it was recent. A forest trail, winter heavy, with a single set of footprints leading through untouched snow. "You painted that after I left." "I didn't sleep that night either." Nola turned toward him, her voice quieter now. "What do we do with this?" Ellis stepped closer. "Let it become something, let it grow. I don't trust things that come too fast." "Then let it come slow," he said. "But don't shut the door, not yet." She studied him, her walls trembling under the weight of something she hadn't prepared for. "I need to go," she said finally. He didn't try to stop her. "Will you come back?" She hesitated. "Only if you stop buying art kits you don't need." Ellis's mouth twitched with a ghost of a grin, but he nodded. "Deal." She left without another word. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft, silent, and unexpected. Nola stood for a long minute on the sidewalk, coat pulled tight, heart unsteady. Then she walked home, unsure of what had just begun, but knowing deep in her chest that something had. Nola hadn't seen Ellis in 12 days. She'd returned home from the gallery that night feeling like the ground beneath her had shifted. Nothing had changed outwardly. Her store still needed repairs. Her receipts still piled up, but she felt different. Like her world had cracked open just wide enough to let in a sliver of something she wasn't sure she was ready for. But she hadn't heard from him, not a call, not a message. Not another quiet delivery or mysterious donation. Nothing, and as much as she wanted to pretend that was a relief, the silence pressed in harder with each passing day. By the second week, she stopped checking the coat pocket for another card. By the end of it, she stopped trying to forget the way he'd looked at her in the gallery. The store had been busier lately. Word had gotten around about her artwork being featured in a Millionaire's private collection. She hadn't told anyone what the sketch was or who it was of. People assumed it was some muse, some fabricated memory. She let them think whatever they wanted, but she hadn't returned to the trail. She hadn't gone near the road that wound past the pine trees and ended at that impossible estate. Until the morning she found the envelope. It wasn't mailed. It had been slipped under the door, just inside the threshold of the shop. Heavy parchment, her name written in ink that looked hand-drawn but precise. Inside was a folded page with a single sentence: "I never wanted to overwhelm you. But if you walk away without knowing what this could be, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Below was an address, not his house, a different place, a location she didn't recognize but instinctively knew wasn't random. She stared at it for a long time before tucking it into her jacket and locking up early. The address led her to a building that looked abandoned from the outside. Bricks worn, windows dark, no sign, no lights. She almost turned back until she heard the music, faint, low, a piano. She stepped inside. The space was cavernous, a high-ceilinged warehouse, but this one hadn't been remodeled. The floorboards groaned underfoot. Dust curled in the air, catching the late afternoon light through slatted windows. At the center of the room was a grand piano. Ellis sat at it, back to her, fingers moving slowly across the keys. She waited. He didn't look up, but his voice carried. "I didn't know if you'd come. I almost didn't. I would have waited anyway." Nola stepped closer. "Why here? This building used to be a youth center. It shut down before I turned 16. I used to sneak in after school and play that piano. It was the only thing that made sense when everything else didn't." She watched his hands slow, then fall still. "I bought the building last year," he said. "Haven't done anything with it yet. Thought maybe I'd turn it into an artist's co-op or a community studio, but I couldn't bring myself to change it." "Why not?" "Because it's the last place I felt like myself, before the money, before the pressure. Before I started building walls no one could see through." Ellis stood and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Until you," Nola's breath caught. "I don't need you to fix anything," he said. "I don't want to fix you either. I want to build something with you. Something that doesn't have to be perfect to be worth it." She looked around the room at the cracked walls and the broken light fixtures. "It's a mess," she said. "So am I," Ellis replied, "but I've never wanted anything more." Nola stepped forward slowly, her voice quiet. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he said, "but I'd rather figure it out with you than alone." He held out his hand. She stared at it, and then she took it. They stood there in the middle of the forgotten building, the piano silent behind them, the city outside moving on without them. "I was scared you disappeared," she said. "I thought giving you space was the right thing. But I should have known you'd take silence as rejection. I've spent years learning how to survive alone," she said. "It's hard to believe someone like you would want to stay." "I don't want to stay," Ellis said, his voice rough. "I want to build roots with you." They left the building together. The next week, Ellis walked into her shop not to buy anything, not to deliver anything, but to paint. She'd cleared out the back room, fixed the leak, and found an extra stool. He brought his own brushes. They worked in silence at first, then in laughter. Then in quiet conversation about long-forgotten memories. He didn't try to change her rhythm. He just joined it. 3 weeks later, he invited her to the estate, not for dinner, not for a date, but for a plan. "I bought the storefront next to yours," he said, handing her a key. "I want to turn it into a free studio space for kids, for anyone who needs it." She stared at him. "I'll fund it," Ellis said. "You run it, you teach, you decide what it becomes. You trust me with that, I trust you with everything." Spring came slowly, but it came all the same. Her store thrived. The studio next door opened with a line out the door, and Ellis stayed, not as a benefactor, not as a shadow, but beside her. On a trail months later, where it had all begun, he stopped mid-step and pulled something from his coat, a ring, simple, elegant. Set with a single stone, he didn't kneel, he just looked at her, eyes steady. "I took a wrong turn once, and it led me to everything I didn't know I needed. Say yes." Nola didn't hesitate. She wrapped her arms around him and whispered, "Yes." The sun filtered through tall windows as Nola stood barefoot in the studio, her hands streaked with ochre and burnt sienna. The space buzzed with quiet energy. Students murmuring over their canvases, the scratch of pencils, a gentle hum of creativity that had become the pulse of her days. It had been nearly 6 months since Ellis had slipped that ring into her palm on the trail, and not a single day since had passed without some small moment that reminded her what they were building together. She glanced toward the corner where Ellis stood, sleeves rolled, bent over a charcoal sketch beside one of the teens from the community program. He didn't correct the boy's lines. He asked questions, listened. And when the student finally looked up with a grin, Ellis returned it without hesitation. his expression open in a way she doubted he ever showed at the board meetings or fundraisers his name still carried him into. Nola wiped her hands and crossed the room. "You're giving him too much confidence," she teased softly. "He's earning it," Ellis said, glancing over his shoulder. "He's got an eye for contrast." She leaned slightly against him. "You said the same about me once." "I was right then, too." A knock at the glass front door interrupted them. Nola turned to see a woman in her early 40s standing outside, holding a worn folder and looking uncertain. Nola opened the door herself. "Hi," the woman said, her voice quiet. "Sorry to just show up, I wasn't sure where else to go." "Someone gave me your name at the community center." "You're at the right place," Nola said, stepping aside. "Come in. I'm Tasha. My daughter's been drawing on the back of grocery receipts for 2 years. I don't have much, but I heard you might have space for her here." Ellis had come up beside Nola silently. "We don't charge," he said. The woman's eyes widened. "But I thought we don't charge," he repeated gently. "Not for this." Tasha blinked twice, then nodded. "She'll be here tomorrow." After she left, Nola glanced at Ellis. "You didn't even hesitate." "I never do when it comes to people like her. Or you." Later that night, they sat on the rooftop of Ellis's estate, wrapped in a blanket beneath a sky softened by dusk and stars. The tall pines rustled in the wind, and a tray of half-eaten strawberries and a bottle of wine sat forgotten between them. "Do you ever miss it?" Nola asked, her head resting against his shoulder. "Miss what? The life you had before? The distance? The detachment? The control?" "I don't think it was ever control," Ellis said slowly. "More like armor, but no, I don't miss it. I don't miss walking into rooms and wondering who wants something from me. I don't miss hiding behind walls that didn't even have windows." She looked up at him. "You're not hiding anymore." "No, you made sure of that." He paused. "I was going to wait until the end of the year. I had a whole plan. A gathering, champagne, something dramatic." She raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like you." "Exactly. That's why I'm not doing it." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something small and folded. "This is what I'm doing instead." She opened the paper slowly. It was a sketch, not of her, not of a trail or a face or a memory. It was of a small house, cedar siding, big windows, a porch swing. 2 easels sat on the back deck, facing a stretch of trees. "It's the land next to the studio," Ellis said. "I bought it last month. I want to build this with you." She stared at the drawing for a long time. "You designed it." "I sat up 3 nights figuring out where the light would fall best in the mornings." "Ellis," she whispered, "you don't have to decide now, but it's yours. If you want it." She kissed him before he could say anything else, her fingers curling into his collar, her heart thudding so loud she was sure he could hear it. "I want it," she said against his mouth. "I want all of it." They broke ground on the house in early fall. The walls went up slowly, framed by laughter and more paint than was strictly necessary. Nola painted a mural on the bedroom ceiling before the drywall was even sealed, and Ellis installed floor-to-ceiling windows in the studio wing with his own hands, refusing to let contractors touch the space where she'd spend her mornings. They didn't rush a wedding. They didn't need to. Instead, they hosted a small gathering at the finished house 1 year after their first meeting. No tuxedos. No speeches. Just the students from the studio, neighbors from the ridge, and the woman who'd once told Nola she was the first person Ellis had ever drawn from memory. She cried when he slid the ring onto Nola's finger in front of the porch swing, whispering a vow only she could hear. And as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in gold and fire, Nola stood beside the man who had once been nothing more than a stranger on a forgotten road, and now was everything home, future, and heart. Inside the house, the walls were already filled with new sketches. Not of her. Not of him, but of the life they had built together, forever.